The madness of the NBA offseason is officially here, and it is not good news for your Philadelphia 76ers. We were awakened by a shocking Woj bomb saying that breaking news, the Brooklyn Nets have agreed in principle on a trade to send forward Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks for Bojan Bogdanovic, 4 unprotected first-round picks, a protected first-round pick via the Bucks, an unprotected pick swap, and a second-round pick, sources tell ESPN. So this is the type of blockbuster deal that will be the domino that starts things across the league, and one in which these Sixers are on the back of. And what does this prove? That the Villanova Knicks have come together, and if we can have one takeaway from this trade as a whole, is that Villanova is absolutely not a Philadelphia school. Now, in all seriousness, this is a massive trade that has some really negative implications on the Sixers. I do want to dive into it from the Sixers angle, the Knicks angle, and touch a little bit on the Nets angle as well. And I'm going to start right here with the Knicks. They absolutely overpaid. That is a ton to give up for a guy who, while he's a malleable player, a guy that can fit in any system, he still does have his flaws. And to dive into what Bridges brought to the table this year, 19.6 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 3.6 assists, shot 37.2% from 3, 43.6% from the field. He did have 1 steal per game. He also shot 40.5% from the corner. 88.2% of his threes are assisted. Still just 27 years old, about to turn 28. A really team-friendly cap hit, sitting around the $22 million range. And I do think it's important to take the wider view of Bridges, is he is a guy who's seen his role change pretty drastically. That we know in Phoenix, he essentially was a 3-and-D type role player. Then he was thrown to the Brooklyn Nets in that trade, that massive blockbuster trade. In those first 27 games he played there, and really like the first 17, 15-ish, he was particularly elite. But during the beginning of that season, that small sample size, averaged 26.1 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 2.7 assists, shot the ball pretty well, 37.6% from 3 on 6.7 attempts per game. He's a guy that looked to have that potential star potential, a little bit above what he was given credit for to that point. Things regressed a little bit this year, and we got a little bit clearer picture of who he is. But who he is exactly what this Knicks team need. Now, to speak about the Knicks for a second, we obviously know that they bounced these Sixers out of the playoffs. We had plenty of back and forth on here about that. And while you have to tip the cap, give the respect there, I still think there was something just a bit not quite legitimate about this Knicks team, that I still think they were short on that top-end talent. That Jalen Brunson is terrific. He's an incredible player. But when you look beyond that, the Dante DiVincenzo's of the world, the Josh Harts of the world, the Isaiah Hartensteins of the world, are those repeatable performances that you feel confident going into them next season that they can still produce at that level? I personally did not feel that was the case, and that is why you go out and get a Mikal Bridges. That we know there is the relationship there. The Villanova Knicks, we're going to hear 1,000 times this year throughout the season, and he is a guy that fits stylistically too. That what Bridges is, and what I think the best version of him as a basketball player is, he's going to be a guy that is essentially a 3-and-D player with a little more, that he can create a little bit. He can put the ball on the floor, attack a closeout, drive to the rim, and defensively is where he's going to shine. That this Knicks team is going to be a nightmare to play against, that their perimeter defense is going to be unbelievable. The way that they're going to buy into the Tom Thibodeau system, it is some scary stuff what the Knicks are building, and you do have to tip the cap here. And that is why it is bad from a Sixers perspective, is you have to sit back and say, how can we be better than that team? Never mind the fact that the Boston Celtics just had one of the most statistically dominant seasons of all time and won the NBA championship. And the Sixers are sitting here with just Joel Embiid on roster and a ton of cap space trying to figure it out from here. Now, in defense of Daryl Morey a little bit, again, this is a ton, the price tag that they are paying. We're talking 5 first-round picks, a swap, some more in the mix there. And it also should be noted that there really was not a route in which Bridges could get to the Sixers, that there was a little bit of respect here. And to chime in specifically, these reports from Ian Begley here, he first tweets out that the Mikal Bridges deal came together quickly after Bridges informed the Nets that he wanted to be a Knick. Bridges prepared to sign with New York Knicks, and his side was prepared to use that leverage to keep other teams from trading him for him, per SNY sources. And he elaborates to say, Nets surely didn't want to trade Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks, but Bridges' side was prepared to force the issue by telling teams he wanted to be with New York, per SNY sources. Bridges' side made it clear to Brooklyn that he wanted to be with New York, reunite with Villanova teammates Brunson, Hart, and DiVincenzo. And to add on to the fact that I realistically don't even think the Sixers could come up with a package to compete with what the Knicks just offered, you do just kind of got to hold the L here, but the Sixers do have to find a way to get better. And for a quick second, as far as the Brooklyn Nets, it certainly hurts having to trade your star player to a crosstown rival, a team that certainly has had far more success as a franchise than yourself, but I'm very happy for them for actually choosing a direction. And they also went on to have another trade here saying, Woj tweets out, another massive deal. The Brooklyn Nets has a deal with Houston to return the Nets' 2026 first-round pick for a 2027 Phoenix Suns first-round pick, sources tell ESPN. The Rockets also acquired 2025 right to swap with Houston/OKC for the first 2025 Suns first-round pick. More details or picks coming. So a lot of this, it seems like the Rockets are making a posturing move at Kevin Durant out there in Phoenix. As I mentioned, this is the first domino, that there's a lot more to go down, and that's where these Sixers need to get in on the action. But I do just want to recognize that I do respect and think it is the best choice for the Nets to actually commit to this rebuild and choose a direction as a franchise. And now when we're speaking about a franchise being in limbo, we unfortunately got to look right back in the mirror at the Philadelphia 76ers because this is not a great sign. Now, if I got to take one positive from this, my mind goes to OG Anunoby. That we know that the Knicks made their all-in push to bring in OG midseason, that they gave up a ton to bring him in a trade, and as of now, he's officially a free agent. That he did opt out of his player option. That was the expectation as a whole, that he was going to get a bigger contract than that just over $19 million number indicated. And for what it's worth, per Ian Begley, that the Knicks still have interest. That he tweets, quote, told the Knicks trade from Mikal Bridges does not change their hopes that they can re-sign free agent OG Anunoby. That remains the priority for the club. And while that is great to hear in theory, it's a different story when we're talking about where is that money coming from or where is your fit on the team. That even if OG Anunoby is to return to the New York Knicks this year, he's going to have a little bit different role than was the case for that half a season that he did spend there. And to dive into what he does bring to the table, during his time with the Knicks, he averaged 14.7 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, 2.1 assists, shot 38.2% from the three, 45.7% on corner threes, still just 26-year-old. He is a guy that is coming into the best years of his NBA career. I'm personally, if you're going to make me choose, would I rather Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby? I'm taking Mikal Bridges 10 times out of 10. OG is the better defender, but I just have some concerns about him being an actual guy that you can rely on for reliable offense, a guy that can create on his own. And even if you want to dive into these Knicks numbers again, 96.1% of his threes are assisted. And he's not a guy that I expect to, take threes off the dribble often, but that's still a number that's a little bit higher than I'm comfortable with. And to compare it directly to Bridges there, 88.2% of his threes assisted. So still a pretty high figure, a guy that's not going to be known as a self-creator, a shot creator, but there's certainly more in Bridges' bag than is the case with OG. And the biggest fear for the Sixers is absolutely paying a guy a near max contract and him not being able to deliver on the production that is expected, as Tobias Harris has sucked up from this franchise for the past 5 years. So for the Sixers here, you truly got to get in the lab, that you need to take a hard look in the mirror and actually factor in how do you beat these teams, that the calculus should absolutely change after this deal, that you no longer have to think about just building the best version of the Sixers. You have to factor in how are we going to be better than these teams. And now when you look at the Eastern Conference, the teams that are having success, we're just going to use the Boston Celtics and New York Knicks as an example right here. What do those teams have in common? Number one, they've figured out their identity. For the Celtics, they're more of a team that wants to pace in space, drive to the basket, and kick out for threes, as well as committing on the defensive end, play a ton of five-out basketball. Then you look at the Knicks, and they're a team that is absolutely leaning into this hard-nosed defensive identity. And for both teams, they now have this flourish of perimeter defenders, these big-time wings. And what do the Sixers have? They've been lacking in that specific category forever. So for Daryl Morey here, it is draft night tomorrow. You have to find a way to improve this team by the end of the night. I know that he will face the music and talk to the press. I will be breaking all that down right here on Sixers Digest, so stay tuned for that tomorrow night as well. But the bottom line is he's got to find a way to make this team better. I don't know if that is guys like Zach LaVine. I don't know if that is guys like LeBron James, who I think is pretty much certainly out of play at this point in time. Could there be a Brandon Ingram? There's a lot of growing smoke about that being the case. But then how does Brandon Ingram stack up to the Mikal Bridges, the OG Anunoby? Even guys like Jimmy Butler could be in play when talking about these potential additions. But Daryl Morey has to do something. That now everything is open. The floodgates have opened for the NBA transaction season. We know that Daryl is a guy that wants to be a big-time player in that field. But if we're going to call a spade here, we have not quite seen the level of aggression that is necessary for the franchise. That all of this for Daryl Morey was building to this particular offseason. That you cleared all the cap space that you possibly could clear. You undid all the contracts you possibly could undo. There's no more Al Horford contract looming. There's no more Ben Simmons situation. No more James Harden situation. No more Tobias Harris contract on the books. This is about building a championship contending roster around the pieces that you do have. That being Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. It's a pretty damn good starting point, but it means nothing if you cannot find the right players around him, as has continued to be the case for the entirety of each of their careers to this point. So for Daryl Morey, this should be a moment of reflection, that you see what a successful franchise is doing. You see what the Knicks saw a little bit of success, were not content with that, and found a way to get better. You got to look yourself in the mirror and find a way to how to get this team out of it. So for now, we will see what happens. It is draft day tomorrow, and I'm very excited about it. I do think these Sixers, at the minimum, will do something tomorrow, and we'll have some sort of new move to break down. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you're tapped in for all of that. Got plenty of content flowing out this weekend, as it is a big week for the Sixers. I am frustrated. I do think that the Knicks did win the night by getting this deal done. I think both teams made the right choice, both the Nets and the Knicks, and the team that didn't is the one sitting on the sideline with your Philadelphia 76ers. So I will get a little more in-depth talking about the OG Anunoby situation, how this impacts things, and how things go from here moving forward. I want to let the dust settle, so this is just kind of my immediate takeaways for this specific deal. But once again, make sure you're dropping any comments that you do have, liking this video, and subscribing if you haven't already. I'll talk with you next time right here at Sixers Digest. Peace.